Emma was a young woman in her early 20s, working as a waitress in a small family-style restaurant located near the center of the city. The restaurant was not fancy or luxurious. It was the kind of place where people stopped for quick meals, workers during lunch break, families looking for something affordable, students trying to save money. The chairs were old, the menu was faded, and the walls needed new paint. But Emma did not mind any of that. She liked her job because she liked helping people. She believed that serving others with kindness made the world a softer place. Every morning, Emma arrived earlier than everyone else. She would help clean the tables, arrange the chairs, and make sure everything looked fresh and welcoming. She never complained, even though she didn't earn much and the manager rarely appreciated her efforts. Most of the staff treated the job as just a job, something to get done and get over with. But for Emma, it was more personal. She treated every customer like they mattered. She smiled, listened, and made sure they felt comfortable. Many customers liked Emma for her gentle nature. They would often say things like, "You make this place feel warm," or "You remind me of my daughter." But there were also people who did not understand her kindness. Some co-workers whispered behind her back. They said she was too slow because she spent time talking politely and helping customers who struggled. They believed speed was more important than compassion. Some customers took her kindness as weakness. They would snap fingers at her, complain loudly, or treat her like she did not have feelings. Emma noticed all of it, but she never fought back. She kept her smile because she believed reacting with anger only created more anger. Emma lived alone in a very small rented room, just enough space for a bed, a shelf, and a fan. She didn't have fancy clothes or expensive things. Most of her salary went to rent and basic needs. Even then, whenever she saw someone struggling, she tried to help in little ways. Offering someone an extra napkin, bringing warm water when someone looked tired, or simply giving a few kind words when someone seemed sad. She believed that even a small act of kindness could change someone's day. One reason Emma was so gentle was because of how she grew up. Her mother had passed away when she was young, and she was raised by her grandmother. Her grandmother always used to say, "Kindness is a treasure. People may laugh at you today, but the world remembers those who have gentle hearts." Emma carried those words in her heart every day. Even after her grandmother passed away, those teachings never left her. When someone needed help, Emma helped. When someone needed patience, she waited. And when someone hurt her, she forgave. But not everyone understood that. Some coworkers, especially a girl named Lila, used to make fun of her. Lila would say in a loud voice, "Look at Emma, acting like she's living in a fairy tale. This is real life. No one cares about your kindness." Others laughed and agreed. Sometimes they imitated the way Emma talked politely to customers. They rolled their eyes when she helped someone who seemed poor. They couldn't understand why she went out of her way for people who might not tip her. Emma heard their comments. She was not unaware. But instead of feeling anger, she felt sorry for them. She thought that maybe they had not experienced kindness themselves, so they didn't know how valuable it was. Still, even though she stayed calm, the mocking sometimes hurt. She would go to the staff restroom, take a deep breath, and tell herself, "It's okay. You are doing the right thing." She refused to let cruelty change who she was. Every day, Emma walked to work through the same busy road. She always noticed the old fruit seller sitting at the corner of the street. His stall was small and his clothes were worn. Sometimes he didn't sell enough fruit and looked worried. Whenever Emma had a little extra money, she bought fruit from him, even if she didn't need it. And every time she did, the old man would say, "Bless you, child." Emma would smile and walk away with her small bag of fruit, feeling warm inside. It was small things like this that made Emma different. She did not help for attention. She did not help to look good. She helped because she believed everyone deserved to be treated like a human being, with respect and care. She didn't have a powerful family. She didn't have wealth. She only had her heart. But that heart was full. People often say the world is hard, so we must be hard too. But Emma refused to believe that. She believed that softness was not weakness, it was strength. Being kind even when others are unkind takes courage. Being gentle when the world is harsh takes power. And Emma had that kind of power. She did not know that soon, her kindness, the very thing people laughed at, would change her life forever. She did not know that life was preparing something surprising for her. Something she never expected. Something that would show everyone that kindness is not foolish. It is priceless. Her story was about to take a turn. A turn that would make everyone who mocked her regret it. If you want, I can now expand part 2 next in the same style. The day started like any other. The sun was bright outside, but inside the restaurant everything felt rushed and heavy. It was lunchtime, the busiest time of the day. People from offices nearby came flooding in, looking tired and hungry, wanting to eat quickly and return to work. The bell above the restaurant door kept ringing as more customers walked in. Chairs scraped the floor. Cutlery clattered. Voices overlapped. It felt as if the whole place was moving in fast motion. Emma moved gracefully between the tables, carrying plates with steady hands and a polite smile. She tried her best to take orders carefully, remember special requests, and make every customer feel welcomed. Even when she felt tired, she didn't show it. She believed a smile could make someone's day better. But her co-workers felt differently. They rushed. They slammed plates. They spoke loudly and carelessly. They didn't care about connecting with customers, only about finishing tasks fast and going home early. Their faces showed boredom, frustration, and impatience. The manager was not much help either. He stayed behind the counter, checking his phone more than watching the staff. Whenever something went wrong, he blamed the waiters, especially Emma, because she would never talk back. He liked employees who feared him. And Emma, being kind and quiet, became an easy target. He often said things like, "Emma, you're too slow. Emma, stop talking too much. Emma, hurry up or customers will leave." But Emma wasn't slow. She was just gentle. And gentle people are often misunderstood. On that particular afternoon, the restaurant was even busier than usual. A group of co-workers laughed loudly near the counter while Emma worked. They watched her move from one table to another and whispered things about her. Lila, the same girl who always teased Emma, leaned toward another waiter and said with a smirk, "Look at her. She thinks smiling will solve everything. This world doesn't care about smiles." The others laughed. They thought they were smarter, stronger, more realistic. They thought being kind made Emma weak. But Emma continued working, pretending she didn't hear their voices. She didn't want to give their words any space inside her heart. Customers kept calling. "Miss, more water. Excuse me, where's my order? Can you bring the bill?" Emma responded to each one patiently, even when some spoke rudely. She nodded, she apologized, she hurried. Her legs hurt from standing, but she didn't slow down. She understood that serving others was not only about giving food, it was about making people feel seen. While she worked, she noticed details others missed. A tired mother trying to calm her crying child. A lonely old man who ordered a single cup of tea and sat quietly. A couple who looked upset after an argument. Emma's heart was soft enough to feel these things. She wished she could do more for everyone. But the day had no room for softness. Orders piled up. The kitchen buzzed with shouting. Plates clanged. Customers snapped fingers. The pressure grew like heat in the air. At one point, Emma made a small mistake. She forgot to bring extra napkins to a table. The manager saw the customer waiting and immediately raised his voice. "Emma, what are you doing? How many times do I need to remind you? Focus." The whole restaurant turned to look. Emma's cheeks burned, but she simply said, "I'm sorry," and hurried to get the napkins. She did not argue. She did not want to create drama. Lila laughed loudly and said, loud enough for others to hear, "See? This is what happens when you try to be kind. Just do the work and stop acting like a saint." Emma didn't respond. Inside, she felt a sting. But she reminded herself of her grandmother's words. Kindness is your strength. Don't let the world change that. As the afternoon went on, the work felt heavier. The restaurant became stuffy and warm. Sweat formed on Emma's forehead, but she wiped it quickly and kept going. Her feet hurt, her back ached, and she hadn't had time to drink water. But still, she moved carefully, politely, patiently. Then something happened that Emma noticed, something others missed. A woman outside the restaurant window seemed to be struggling to walk. She leaned on the wall, breathing heavily. People walked past her without even looking. The world was so busy. Too busy to see someone who might need help. Emma felt her heart tighten. She wanted to go outside, but she was in the middle of serving 3 tables. She kept glancing toward the door, worried. None of her co-workers noticed. None of them cared to notice. Their eyes were focused only on customers who would tip well. Their minds were filled with complaints about work, about pay, about life. But Emma's eyes saw something different. Someone who needed care. The restaurant noise continued. Laughter, orders, plates, voices. But Emma's attention kept drifting to the door again and again. Something inside her whispered, "Someone out there needs you." She couldn't explain it. She just felt it. That quiet feeling, that gentle awareness. That was Emma's gift. A gift others mistook for weakness. Nobody knew that in just a little while, this small moment, this unnoticed detail would change everything. The busy restaurant, the mocking coworkers, the rude manager. All of it was about to shift. Life was preparing to show everyone who Emma truly was, and what kindness was worth. The door of the restaurant slowly opened, but unlike the usual loud, hurried customers, the person who entered stepped in so gently that almost no one noticed at first. It was an elderly woman, frail, thin, and moving with careful, trembling steps. Her clothes were old, worn at the edges, and her shoes looked like they had walked many hard miles. Her hair was silver, messy as if she had no strength to comb it properly. She looked tired, not just tired in the body, but tired in the heart. The customers closest to the door glanced at her for only a second before turning back to their conversations. People rarely notice quiet suffering. They tend to see only what is loud, shiny, confident. Someone who looks weak or poor fades into the background, like they are invisible. The old woman took a small step inside and stopped. Her breathing was uneven. Her eyes looked around, searching for a place to sit. She didn't speak. She didn't call for help. She just stood there, as if unsure whether she was welcome. Emma noticed her first. While carrying a tray full of dishes, Emma's eyes automatically softened. Her heart recognized the look on the woman's face. The look of someone who has been through too much for too long. Someone who doesn't even have the strength to ask for help anymore. Emma gently placed the tray on the nearest counter and moved toward her. But before she could reach, Lila spoke from behind the counter in a sarcastic tone. "Oh great. Another one. Probably here to sit for hours and buy nothing." Some customers nearby heard her and snickered. One even said quietly with irritation, "This restaurant shouldn't let these types come in." The old woman heard them. Her eyes lowered, as if every cruel word added weight to her already heavy shoulders. She slowly tried to walk farther inside, but her steps were unsteady, like her legs couldn't carry her anymore. Emma's heart clenched. She moved faster, but before she reached her, the old woman's foot slipped slightly. Her knees buckled, and in a second she fell. The sound of her body hitting the floor was soft, but the shock of it echoed through the room. For one moment, everything froze, and then instead of concern, instead of alarm, laughter broke out from a corner table. A group of young adults, probably students, laughed loudly. "Did you see that? She fell like a twig. Someone record this." Their laughter wasn't just careless. It was cruel. Others didn't laugh, but they didn't help either. They just stared. Some with annoyance. Some with disgust. Some with indifference. The manager frowned, not out of worry, but irritation. "Great. This is all we needed. She's going to cause a scene." Emma did not hear any of them. She was already on her knees beside the old woman. "Ma'am, are you okay? Please take my hand." Her voice was gentle, like a warm blanket on a cold night. The old woman's hand trembled as she reached out. Emma held it firmly but kindly, helping her sit up slowly. Emma noticed how light she was, how weak her fingers felt, like a person who had not eaten well for days. The old woman tried to speak, but her voice cracked. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. Emma shook her head softly. Please don't apologize. It's okay. You're safe now. She brushed dust from the woman's sleeve with such tenderness that some silent customers felt something move inside their hearts. Something they had forgotten: empathy. But the mocking voices returned. Why are you even bothering? She probably can't pay for anything anyway. She's just wasting our time. Emma closed her eyes for a moment. Not to block out the insults, but to gather patience. She helped the old woman sit at the nearest table, supporting her gently like she was holding something precious. Because to Emma, every human being was precious. Please rest. I'll bring you some warm water. Emma hurried to the kitchen. The manager stepped in front of her, blocking her path. Don't waste resources on someone who won't buy anything. Emma looked right into his eyes, something she rarely did. Her voice didn't rise. It stayed soft. She fell. She needs help. That's reason enough. The manager rolled his eyes in frustration but stepped aside. He knew Emma would do it anyway. And strangely, something about the way she spoke, calm, firm, unshaken, made him stay silent. Emma brought warm water. Then she brought a small bowl of soup, using her own tip money to pay for it. When she placed the bowl in front of the old woman, the woman's eyes filled with tears. No one had treated her gently in a very long time. She held Emma's hand and whispered with a trembling voice, "You have a heart that remembers humanity." Emma smiled softly. Everyone deserves kindness. But the old woman sighed and said something that made Emma pause. Not everyone believes that. Emma squeezed her hand gently. I do. The old woman looked at Emma for a long time, as if she was seeing something rare, something the world had almost forgotten: compassion without conditions. Around them, life in the restaurant continued. Laughter, orders, conversations, but something had shifted. A few customers who had laughed now felt ashamed. A couple who had ignored her now looked down, embarrassed. Even Lila, who had mocked earlier, seemed slightly uncomfortable. But still, no one truly understood who this woman was. She looked like someone ordinary, someone weak, someone forgotten. But what no one knew, not Emma, not the customers, not the manager, was that this old woman was not poor at all. She was the mother of one of the wealthiest men in the city, the very man who owned half the businesses nearby. And the truth about her identity was about to change everything. Forever. The old woman sat at the small wooden table, her hands still trembling slightly. Emma stayed near her, making sure she felt safe. The restaurant noise continued, but something about that moment felt separate from everything else, like the world had slowed around them. Emma watched the woman carefully. Her breathing was uneven, and she looked exhausted, like she had been walking for a long time. Her eyes were tired, but there was kindness in them. A quiet kind of sadness lived there too, the kind that only comes from living through many difficult years. Take your time, Emma said softly. You're safe here. But the rest of the restaurant didn't share Emma's gentle view. Whispers had started spreading like wind moving through leaves. Some customers looked annoyed. Some looked judgmental. And some simply looked uninterested, already returning to their meals. Lila leaned against the counter and whispered loudly to another waitress, loud enough for others to hear. Look at Emma again, always trying to act like a nurse or a hero. She doesn't understand. People like that old lady just make trouble. Another coworker laughed and replied, and she probably won't even pay. Watch. Emma will end up paying for her too. They laughed as if it was entertainment. Emma heard it this time, and for a second her heart ached. But she didn't respond. She knew arguing with unkind hearts was like speaking to a wall. She focused on the old woman instead. The woman looked at Emma and said quietly, "You have warm hands." Her voice was weak, but the words were sincere. Emma smiled a little. My grandmother used to say that warm hands mean a warm soul. The old woman's lips curved. Not quite a smile, but something close. A flicker of happiness, small but real. But the peace did not last long. The restaurant door opened again, loudly this time. A group of young men entered. They were laughing loudly, full of energy, joking among themselves. They walked to a nearby table and sat, making noise as if they wanted the whole world to see them. One of them noticed the old woman. He nudged his friend and snickered. "Hey, look! Someone's grandma got lost." Another one laughed, whispering just loud enough. "Maybe she's here to beg." Their laughter echoed. The old woman lowered her head slowly, as if each laugh pushed her further down. Emma's jaw tightened. She didn't like confrontation, but something inside her rose. A quiet anger, not sharp or loud, but strong. She walked over to the group of boys. Her voice was calm. "She is a guest here. Please be respectful." One boy raised his eyebrows and smirked. "Chill. We're just joking." Emma didn't raise her voice. She didn't show frustration. She simply said, "Some people don't have the strength to laugh with you. Please be kind." The boys were silent for a moment. Her words hit in a place they didn't expect, but they quickly laughed again, trying to cover their embarrassment. Emma turned away. She returned to the old woman, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Don't worry, I'm here." But not everyone shared Emma's compassion. At that moment, while Emma was checking if the soup was warm enough, the old woman tried to stand. Maybe she didn't want to be a burden. Maybe she just felt like she didn't belong. She placed her hand on the table to push herself up. Her knees trembled again. Her body shook, and suddenly, she collapsed to the floor. A gasp spread through the restaurant, a sound of surprise and shock. But again, no one rushed to help. Some people stared, some whispered, some looked annoyed, and some unbelievably laughed again. One young girl at a corner table even took out her phone, ready to record the incident. Emma moved faster than anyone else. She reached the old woman before her body fully hit the ground, catching her gently in her arms. She lowered her slowly to the floor, cradling her head so it wouldn't hit the tiles. "Ma'am, can you hear me?" Emma asked, her voice trembling with worry. The old woman's eyes fluttered weakly. She looked fragile, like a withered leaf that could break at the softest touch. Emma's co-workers simply watched. The manager folded his arms and shook his head. "This is why we should not let such people inside," he muttered. Emma looked up at him, and for the first time, something in her eyes was not soft. "She is a human being," Emma said, her voice steady and clear. "She deserves care, not judgment." The restaurant fell silent for a moment. No one knew what to say. Emma helped the old woman sit up again, supporting her softly. She brushed dust from her clothes with careful hands, as if touching something precious. She spoke to her in comforting whispers. "You're okay. I'm here. It's all right. Just breathe." Someone nearby scoffed softly. "Why bother? She's nothing." Emma looked up, her eyes calm but strong, and said, "No one is nothing." For a moment, the entire restaurant felt the truth of her words. Not everyone wanted to accept it, but they felt it. As Emma helped the old woman take slow sips of warm water, the customers watched. Some looked guilty, some looked moved, some looked away. But no one could ignore Emma's kindness anymore. They had witnessed something pure, and they didn't know yet. The woman they thought was nothing was actually someone very important. And fate was already on its way through the city, driving toward the restaurant, preparing to reveal the truth. Everything was about to change. For everyone. Emma gently helped the old woman sit comfortably again. She stayed by her side, as if protecting her from the eyes around the room. The restaurant was still noisy, but something in the air had changed. People watched silently now. They were not laughing anymore. Some out of guilt, some out of discomfort, and some out of confusion. The old woman's hands were shaking. Emma noticed how cold her fingers were. Without thinking twice, she took her own scarf from around her neck and wrapped it gently around the woman's shoulders. It was a small gesture, but it carried a deep warmth. "You must be cold," Emma whispered. The old woman looked at her with eyes that held stories. Stories of pain, of loneliness, of journeys no one knew about. Emma didn't ask questions. She didn't want to make her feel like she had to explain herself. Not everyone who is suffering wants to talk. Sometimes they just want someone to sit beside them, quietly. Emma walked to the kitchen and spoke to the cook, who was older and a bit kinder than the rest. "Can I have a bowl of soup, please?" she asked softly. The cook shrugged. "The manager will complain again." Emma took a slow breath. "I'll pay for it. From my tips." The cook sighed but nodded. He had seen Emma pay for someone's meal many times before. It wasn't new, but it always surprised him how readily she gave, even when she didn't have enough for herself. When the soup was ready, Emma carried it carefully to the table. She placed it in front of the old woman gently, as if placing something fragile in front of a child. "I hope this helps," Emma said with a small smile. The old woman stared at the soup. Her eyes softened. She lifted the spoon slowly, like the bowl was something precious. Like it had been a long time since she held something warm, something made with care. She took a small sip, and tears filled her eyes. Not just one tear, but many, spilling down her wrinkled cheeks quietly, like rain sliding down a window. Emma immediately leaned closer. "Is it too hot? Are you in pain?" The old woman shook her head weakly. "It's just warm," she whispered. "It's been a long time since something felt warm." Emma felt her own heart tighten. The restaurant around them kept moving. Plates clattered, people talked, but for Emma and the old woman, the world felt quiet, as if only they existed. But not everyone was touched. Lila stood near the counter, arms crossed, sour expression twisting her face. "She's getting free food," she muttered. "Unbelievable." Another coworker snickered. "Emma's going to go broke at this rate." They were not whispering to be quiet. They wanted Emma to hear. They wanted to make her feel foolish. But Emma ignored them completely. She focused only on the old woman, making sure she ate slowly, comfortably. Emma handed her a napkin when tears fell, but she didn't ask why she was crying. Sometimes silence is the greatest comfort. After a few slow spoonfuls, the old woman lowered her head and spoke softly, in a voice that cracked like thin glass. "Why are you helping me, child? You don't know me. I have nothing to give you." Emma sat down in the chair across from her. Her hands rested gently on the table, open. Not reaching, not demanding, simply present. "You don't need to give me anything," Emma replied. "You're a human being, and human beings deserve kindness." The old woman blinked, as if the words were something she hadn't heard in years. Human beings. Kindness. Deserve. Words that many forget. Many people believe love and help are only for those who can return the favor. Only for the rich, the strong, the beautiful. But Emma did not believe that. She believed kindness is not a trade, it is a gift. The old woman's voice trembled. "I used to be surrounded by people, many people. But when life changes, people disappear. It is strange how fast the world forgets you." Emma listened quietly. She didn't ask what had happened. She didn't ask where the woman came from. She didn't need details to understand loneliness. The manager finally approached, irritation written all over his face. "Emma," he said loudly, making sure everyone heard. "You can't just give free food to whoever you want. We are running a business, not a charity." Several customers looked up. Some nodded, agreeing with him. Some didn't. Emma stood up slowly. She did not raise her voice. "I paid for her meal," she said softly. "It's from my own money." The manager paused. For a moment he did not expect that. His annoyance didn't disappear, it simply changed shape. "Well, stop wasting your tips then," he snapped. Then he walked away. He didn't care how he sounded. He didn't care that the old woman heard him. He didn't care about human dignity. Emma sat back down. She gently pushed the bowl closer to the old woman again. "Please eat," she whispered. "It will give you strength." The old woman did as told. Slowly, carefully, as though each spoonful was a gift she needed to treasure. Something about the way she ate told Emma one thing clearly. This woman had known hunger. Real hunger. Not missing lunch hunger. Not dieting hunger. But the kind of hunger where your bones ache and your heart feels empty. Emma didn't ask how long she had been hungry. She didn't want to embarrass her. She simply made sure the bowl stayed full until the woman's hands stopped shaking. One customer, a middle-aged woman, watched the scene from a distance. A small frown formed on her lips, not because she was annoyed, but because something inside her moved. Something she couldn't quite explain. Because in that restaurant full of voices, noise, and busyness, only one person saw a human soul instead of a burden. Only one person remembered compassion. Only one person acted like a human being. Emma. She didn't know it yet, but the kindness she offered that afternoon was about to circle back to her in a way she could never have predicted. Because life has a quiet way of rewarding the gentle. And very soon, someone important was going to walk through that door. Someone who had been searching for the woman Emma was helping. Someone whose arrival would change everything. Elena helped the old woman into the small cafe backyard, where the afternoon light was soft and warm. The air smelled like fresh bread and coffee, and despite everything that had happened minutes ago, there was a quiet peace in that corner. Elena placed a clean chair for the old woman and gently helped her sit, taking care not to hurt her leg again. The old woman smiled, still weak, but her eyes were shining with something warm. "Thank you, dear. You have a gentle heart," she said softly. Elena smiled back, but this time her smile held a little sadness. "Anyone would do the same," she replied. But inside, she knew it wasn't true. She had seen how everyone mocked. She had seen how they didn't care. She had seen how people were too busy in their own pride to help someone who was hurting right in front of them. Elena knelt down and carefully wiped the dirt off the old woman's palms with a napkin. The skin was wrinkled, but soft, like someone who had lived many years and carried many stories. The old woman watched her with a thoughtful expression. "Not everyone does what you just did," she whispered. "And you didn't even know me." Elena looked up. "I didn't need to know you. You needed help. That's enough." For a moment, both of them sat quietly. The world outside was loud: cars, people talking, cooks shouting orders. But in that corner, there was only calm. The old woman's eyes glistened with emotion. She placed her trembling hand on Elena's cheek. "You remind me so much of someone I lost," she said, her voice shaking just a little. "Someone who used to believe that kindness was the greatest wealth." Elena didn't know what to say, so she just held her hand gently. She could feel the old woman's emotions. Something deep, something tender. This was no ordinary person. That feeling was clearer now. After a few minutes, Elena stood up and poured a glass of warm water and brought it to her. "Drink slowly," she said. The old woman nodded. As the woman drank, Elena noticed her clothes. They were not cheap. Simple, yes, but the material looked expensive. The stitching was delicate. Her shoes were old, but the quality was high. She looked like someone who once lived in a world of comfort. But now she was alone. Elena wondered, could she be someone's mother? Someone who was well known? Someone powerful? But she didn't ask. Because she knew, sometimes, dignity is lost the moment others start questioning someone's identity. The old woman finished the water, took a deep breath, and looked at her with a soft but serious expression. "Tell me about yourself," she said. Elena blinked. No one asked her that. People usually just ordered, shouted, or ignored her. She sat beside the old woman and spoke slowly. "I work here. I've worked at many places before. My father passed away when I was younger. My mother is sick now. I'm trying to save money for her treatment." And Elena paused. She didn't want to sound like she was complaining. "And I'm just trying to do my best." The old woman listened carefully. Every word seemed to matter to her. "Life has been hard for you," she said softly. Elena nodded but kept her head high. "Yes, but I don't think hardship means you stop being human. People lose themselves when they forget how to care." The old woman smiled, a deep, proud smile. "You are stronger than most people I have met. And you are richer than they will ever be." Elena laughed lightly. "Rich? I'm barely surviving." "No," the old woman corrected, shaking her head slowly. "You have something rare. Something money cannot buy. A heart that sees others." Those words touched Elena deeply. More than any compliment she had received in her entire life. Meanwhile, inside the cafe, the same group of customers who had mocked Elena earlier were still talking and laughing loudly, unaware of what was happening. They had no idea that the woman they insulted was someone important. They had no idea that their actions were about to come full circle. They had no idea that the truth was slowly unfolding. The old woman wiped her eyes with a tissue. "You will remember today," she said quietly, "because life does not forget kindness, even when people do." Just then, the sound of footsteps approached rapidly. Someone was running toward the cafe backyard, breathing fast, almost out of air. Elena and the old woman looked up. A man entered the space. Young, sharply dressed, worried, his eyes scanning until he saw the old woman. His face changed instantly, from panic to relief to deep emotion. "Mother," he said. Elena froze. "Mother?" The old woman looked up calmly, as if she had been waiting for him. "Yes, Daniel," she said softly. "I'm here." Daniel rushed to her side, kneeling down. "I was searching for you everywhere. Why did you go alone? You should have told me." But then his eyes shifted to Elena, and what Elena saw in his eyes was not anger. It was respect, deep, sincere respect, because he had seen her kindness, because he knew what she had done, because he recognized something rare. And in that moment, everything changed. Forever. The moment Daniel called the old woman mother, Elena felt her breath stop for a second. The realization came slowly, like a quiet shock spreading through her chest. This was not just any old woman. This was the mother of one of the richest men in the city. The same man whose face appeared in newspapers, charity events, business magazines. The same man everyone respected or feared. And she, Elena, had helped her without knowing. Daniel gently held his mother's hands. His eyes were filled with both worry and love. "Are you hurt?" he asked softly. The old woman smiled faintly. "Just a small fall. But I was lucky," she said, glancing toward Elena. "Someone saw me." Daniel followed her gaze and looked at Elena again. His expression changed, full of gratitude. "Thank you," he said, sincerely and slowly. Not just words. Real emotion. Elena felt shy. She didn't know what to say. She just nodded. But at that same moment, the group of rude customers who had mocked Elena earlier came outside. They were curious, loud, laughing until they saw Daniel. Instantly, their expressions changed. They recognized him right away. The millionaire, the owner of half the restaurants in the district. Someone extremely powerful. Their laughter died in their throats. One of them whispered, "That's Daniel Hart? The Daniel Hart." Suddenly, their faces went pale. They looked at each other, realizing what they had done. The old woman they insulted, the woman they laughed at, she was his mother. Their embarrassment was heavy in the air. But Daniel ignored them for the moment. His attention was fully on Elena. "What happened here?" he asked quietly. Elena hesitated. She didn't want to create trouble. So she simply said, "She fell. I just helped her." But the old woman gently shook her head, and her voice carried strength now. "No, tell him everything. He should know the truth." Elena looked down. She didn't want to seem like she was complaining. She didn't want to be seen as someone who wanted credit. But the old woman looked into her eyes, encouraging her. So Elena spoke. She explained how the old woman fell, how no one helped, how people laughed, how they mocked her for caring. She told it simply, honestly, without anger. The cafe became silent. Even the wind felt quiet. Daniel's jaw tightened slightly, but he did not shout. He did not lose his temper. His voice was calm, too calm. "You laughed at my mother while she was hurt?" he asked the group. None of them could reply. One of them tried to speak. We didn't know." Daniel's eyes narrowed, cold, sharp, powerful. "And if she was just any other old woman, then it would be okay to mock her?" he asked. Their heads dropped. A heavy silence followed. The old woman touched Daniel's arm. "Let it be," she whispered. "Life itself teaches people, sometimes better than punishment." Daniel nodded slowly, respecting her words. But the group knew they would never forget this moment. The shame would follow them. Then Daniel turned to Elena again. You took care of my mother when nobody did. I will remember this, he said. Elena shook her head. I didn't help her for a reward. Daniel smiled. I know. And that is exactly why it matters. The old woman reached for Elena's hand and held it gently. My son has built skyscrapers and companies, she said softly. But very few people in this world have built a heart like yours. Elena felt tears gather in her eyes, but she did not let them fall. Daniel helped his mother stand. But before they left, the old woman turned back to Elena. Come visit us, she said. I would like to see you again. Elena nodded politely, still overwhelmed. They walked toward a sleek black car waiting outside. People around the street stared, whispering in surprise. But as the old woman sat inside the car, she looked out the window and smiled at Elena once more, soft and full of warmth. Elena stood there quietly, watching them leave. And then, suddenly, something incredible happened. The cafe manager, who had earlier scolded Elena for wasting time helping the old woman, rushed outside. His face was pale, body shaking. He had realized the situation. He had seen who the old woman was. Fear filled his eyes now. He looked at Elena, guilt heavy in his voice. Elena, I didn't know. I was wrong. Elena didn't reply. She only looked at him, calm and steady. For the first time, she felt like her dignity stood taller than his authority. He swallowed. Please, don't leave this job. Elena took a deep breath. She felt something new inside her. Strength, self-worth, a clear understanding that she deserved better. I won't, she said gently. But not because you asked. And she walked back into the cafe, not as someone small, but as someone who knew her value. Someone who had a heart the world could not buy. Days passed after the incident, but Elena could not forget the old woman's warm smile and gentle words. She woke up early every morning, worked hard, served customers, cleaned tables, and saved every small amount she could for her mother's medicine. Life continued, but she felt something inside her had changed. A quiet strength, a new light. Meanwhile, the city continued with its usual noise. People rushed, talked, argued, lived. But somewhere in a large, beautiful mansion at the edge of the city, the old woman Elena had helped was thinking about her too. She remembered Elena's kindness, her calm voice, her gentle hands. She remembered how Elena did not ask for respect or reward. She simply gave. One morning, Elena came to work as usual. She tied her apron, greeted the chef, checked the tables. Everything was normal. But then the cafe door opened, and the entire shop became silent. Daniel walked in. He was dressed simply this time. No expensive suit, no bodyguards, no luxury car visible outside. Just a man who had come for a purpose. The manager rushed to greet him nervously, but Daniel gently motioned him to step aside. His eyes were searching for Elena. When he saw her, he smiled. Good morning. Elena blinked, surprised. Good morning, she replied softly. Daniel gestured toward a table. May we talk? Elena hesitated for a moment, then nodded and sat down across from him. The cafe staff tried to pretend they weren't staring, but everyone watched quietly. Daniel placed a small envelope on the table. My mother asked me to give this to you. Elena didn't touch it. What is it? She asked. Something she wants you to have. Still, Elena hesitated. She didn't want money. She didn't want a reward for being human. Daniel understood immediately. He smiled gently. Don't worry. It's not money. She knows you would not want that. Elena slowly opened the envelope. Inside was a beautifully written note and a card. The note read, You reminded me that kindness is still alive in this world. Come to our home. Not as a guest, as a friend. Signed, Eleanor Hart. Elena felt her chest warm. Her eyes softened. She had been invited not because she helped someone rich, but because she helped a human being. But the card was something else. It was a business card with a phone number and a letter of employment. Daniel watched her reaction carefully. My mother wants you to work with her, he explained. She runs a charity organization. They help elderly people, homeless people, people who have no one. She said you have the heart for it. She wants you there. Elena's breath caught. A new life. A life with purpose. A life where her kindness was not mocked, but valued. But, she whispered, unsure, afraid, I don't have experience. I'm just a waitress. Daniel shook his head firmly. No. You're someone who chooses kindness even when the world chooses cruelty. That's something we cannot teach. That is leadership. Silence filled the cafe, heavy and meaningful. Tears formed in Elena's eyes, but they were not tears of pain. They were tears of relief, of hope, of finally being seen. She nodded slowly. I would like that, she whispered. The cafe manager, who had once scolded her, lowered his head in shame. He knew now what a treasure had been working quietly under his roof. But life always shows truth sooner or later. A week later, Elena visited the Hart mansion. The old woman met her at the door, not as a wealthy lady, not as someone above her, but as someone who was glad she came. They hugged, not as strangers, but as two hearts that understood each other. Over the next months, Elena worked closely with the old woman. They visited shelters, supported poor families, helped elderly people who were alone. And Elena's life began to shine, not because of money, but because of meaning. Her mother received proper treatment and slowly began to recover. They moved to a small but comfortable home. Peace entered their lives like sunlight after a long storm. People in the city began to talk about her, not as the waitress who was mocked, but as the young woman with a great heart who now worked beside one of the most respected families. And what about the people who once laughed at her? They remembered that day forever. They remembered the look on Daniel's face. They remembered the silence that followed. They remembered how quickly pride can fall. Because the truth was clear. Kindness is the greatest wealth. And Elena had been rich all along. She didn't gain her new life because she helped a millionaire's mother. She gained it because she helped a human being. Without expecting anything. Without wanting anything. Just because it was right. And that is the kind of heart the world never forgets.